All right, I'd like to call the Finance, Ways and Means Committee to order for February the 12th, 2025. Members, be sure to sign in so that we can take the roll. All right, is everyone signed in? Does anyone need more time? All right, we'll give it just a second here and let some folks coming in sign in. All right, Madam Clerk, please take the roll. Are we not gonna? Okay, we're having still some technical difficulties. Are we going to put the attendance up on the screen? I'm sorry. So what does the blue represent?
The people that are here, the people that are signed in.
All right, and we do have a quorum. And I do apologize. We are just a little bit unorganized, but we will do better as we move along. That's actually the first time that we have been able to actually take the roll here in finance. So we'll work out those bugs as we move on. Are there any personal orders this morning that anyone like to have the floor? Seeing none. All right, today we have 5 budget hearings, beginning with the Comptroller of the Treasury. And members, you may refer to your dashboard for all presentation documents. And so, Mr. Comptroller, thank you for being patient. We'll ask you and your staff to please come to the desk or podium, and you may begin when you are ready. Thank you all for being here.
Is there a preference in terms of the side? No. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Glad to be here today for our budget hearing. Glad to have with me Jennifer Pfeiffer, our Chief of Staff in the office, and Drew Hawkins, our fiscal manager, with us. I am here today to present the budget for the Office of the Comptroller of the Treasury. I hope you all know, I hope you've heard me say and others in our office say that the Comptroller's mission is to make government work better. I am glad to say that the budget, as presented by the governor, allows for the Comptroller's office to meet our statutory obligations and get the job done that we're trying to do every day. Let me say, I have a couple things for you today specifically, and I'm going to try to, I've tried to, and will try to present this and word this carefully so it's clear to understand. The thing that I do want to recognize, obviously, if there's any office that understands fiscal responsibility, it is ours. And I do recognize with the more challenging revenue environment that we're in, the situation, and my office has not requested any cost increases. However, I do want to talk about the property tax relief program, which is very relevant to constituents in every one of your districts. Now, the good news is today that we do not anticipate needing any additional appropriations in the current fiscal year or in fiscal year 26, the year that you're crafting the budget for. However, we do expect in both of these years, we will continue to eat into the reserve for tax relief. Now, Mr. Chairman and members, I have mentioned in past years that at current funding levels and with enrollment growth in the tax relief program, by fiscal year 2027, the program will run out of money. That is the budget that you'll be working on this time next year. You'll be crafting FY27 this time next year. Now, To give you an example, we expect to provide about $47.3 million in tax relief payments to low-income elderly, disabled, and disabled veteran families in Tennessee this year. Our current appropriation is $41.2 million. So if you do that math, you can see that in this year, we will use about $6 million of our $20 million reserve to make up the difference. We have been depending on program reserves since 2022 to help distribute all of the relief payments. And what does that mean in plain speak? It means that we are actively using non-recurring money to meet recurring needs. If the trends continue, if the growth in enrollment in the tax relief program continues, and the eligibility requirements remain exactly as they are today, and there are several bills out there that have been filed to expand the eligibility, but if the eligibility remains the same as it is today, we will anticipate needing at least $10.3 million more dollars for FY27 and able to make the program work. And I'll be happy to take more questions about that if you have them. I do want to say before I close my comments that I am so grateful. I am especially so grateful as somebody who lives in Upper East Tennessee for the work you did on the legislation that was sponsored by Representative Faison and other members of the Upper East Tennessee delegation. The legislation that you passed to provide financial assistance to property owners whose property was damaged as a result of Hurricane Helene and the flooding. I believe the governor is scheduled to sign that legislation today. And the moment he signs that legislation, we have these postcards ready to go out to the affected property owners so that they can begin to apply for the relief you're providing for them. We know who these folks are. The property assessors in Upper East Tennessee worked very diligently, very hard in the weeks and months following the flooding to identify these folks. We have at least 3,190 of these postcards that are upstairs addressed and ready to go. We have a website created that these citizens are going to be able to utilize in order to take advantage of the relief. We're working with property assessors across the 9 affected counties to help them help their constituents apply for the relief. So we are ready to go. This is very important, and I appreciate your work that makes it possible. Mr. Chairman, those are my comments. Again, focusing on the thanks for the flood relief, the importance of paying attention to the tax relief program. Be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. All right. First person on my list is going to be Representative Hicks of Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for all your hard work on the tax relief for the flood victims. You and Chairman Faison worked extremely hard on that. We truly, truly thank you. It'll help a lot of folks that's really been struggling over the last few months. And my question has to do with property tax relief. I've got several questions. How many Tennesseans currently utilize the property tax relief program? You may have said exactly how many. And how has the number of participants increased each year?
Yes, I'm finding my sheet. Thank you very much. Very important and very relevant questions. In fiscal year 2024, we processed about 149,741 tax relief applications. Of that 149,000, about 96,000 of them were the low-income elderly, while about 36,000 of them were the disabled veterans. About 10,000 of them were disabled, and about 6,600 of them were disabled veteran spouses. I point that out because it is always important to remember that this program serves different populations. You have the low income, elderly, and disabled, and then you have the 100% service connected disabled veterans and their surviving spouses. The bulk of the money in the program goes to the veterans, but the bulk of enrollees in the program is the low income and disabled. You have about 2/3 of the program who are the low income, elderly, and disabled, and 1/3 of the program who are the veterans. However, about 2/3 of the money go to the 1/3 of the veterans, and about 1/3 of the money goes to the 2/3 who are the elderly and disabled.
You recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you had previously stated that the program will run out funding in 2026.
Yep.
If we don't allocate some money. And this is still the projection, I'm sure.
Well, actually, Representative Hicks, let me talk about the nuance there, because when I was here for my budget hearing last year, we thought we would be at a precipice this year. However, something popped up due to a kind of a very technical occurrence that has to do with property assessments and something called the sales ratio being applied. And we have had such a dynamic property market in Tennessee that really counties across our state, most particularly Montgomery County, has gone through over the past couple of years the application of the sales ratio to their assessments. That sales ratio application affects county budgets, and it also impacts the amount of tax relief recipients are eligible to receive. So over the past year or two, property tax relief recipients have taken a hit to the amount of property tax relief they received. Many of you know that because many of you have contacted my office already asking why that occurred. The application of the sales ratio to property tax relief payments actually resulted, while the trend of the program, I think we've had as much as 14.5% growth in enrollees. But last year, the actual cost of the program went down a little bit because of the sales ratio. That really is a one-time effect. So we've kind of whistled past the graveyard for FY26, but we're back in the warning zone for FY27. But getting back to your question about relief, we still see double-digit growth in enrollees to the program.
Representative Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One more question. If this program is not adequately funded to cover the claims, how will the claims be prioritized?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So if the program is and you know, let me say, I'm not advocating for you to fund or not. That is really your call. But if it is not at this time next year, you know, in a position where it will be funded to meet the request, the law currently calls for proration to occur. That is to say that we wait until we receive the total number of claims, and then we see how much money is available, and then we prorate the relief that's handed out. For example, you know, if we have X number of applicants and we have X number of dollars, we say, well, we have enough money to provide you 84% of your regular relief. And then we wait until the end and send that out. That would be different because right now we're paying on the front end. Sometimes we pay the trustee's office directly, and these folks never have to cut a property tax check. If we get to a point that we're moving to proration, people are going to have to proactively pay their property taxes before they receive the relief.
Thank you for that explanation. Thank you, Chairman.
All right, thank you. Mr. Comptroller, yesterday, of course, during our budget hearings, we met with the AOC, and one of the things that came up was a caseload caseloads for the DAs and the PDs. And I know there's been a report that is supposed to have been, I guess, submitted to us by your staff and department.
Mhm.
And can you talk a little bit about that process, how that's going? I know there's been some issues with trying to get some data from General Sessions, is my understanding.
Mhm.
But can you talk about that? And as you do talk about that, what about, or I guess, are you properly staffed to be able to handle that report? And would love to hear your comments on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And while I'm starting, I'll invite Russell Moore, the Director of the Office of Research and Education Accountability, to come down, and he can expand after me. We have, for a number of years, presented the weighted caseload study. That study is a contracted study, and we are glad to be in a position, really since COVID, that we're going to be able to provide you a full measure of the weighted caseload data in the not too distant future, based on some funding we found to contract for that study again. But I'll ask Russell, if that's okay. Russell, identify yourself and expand there.
Sure. Russell Moore, I'm the Director of Research and Education Accountability in the Comptroller's Office. Glad to be with you this morning. I want to draw a distinction between two different weighted caseload studies. So weighted caseload study number one is for the state trial court judges. So this would be Chancery Court, Circuit Court, Criminal Court, Probate Court. Weighted caseload study number two is for the district attorneys and the public defenders. So there are two different stories for those two different types of weighted caseload studies. To get to your question, Mr. Chairman, for the district attorneys and the public defenders, the weights that are used to apply to the cases that are filed, because not all cases take the same amount of time to process. You know, some cases are much more complex, much more difficult. They take longer. Some are much easier and they go faster. So that's where the weights come in. You're weighting the cases because not all of them are the same. Well, the last time those weights were updated was actually 1999. And the last time the Comptroller's Office published a weighted caseload study for the district attorneys and the public defenders was fiscal year 2006. Now, why have there been 20 years since we last published that? The primary reason has been a lack of reliable data from the General Sessions courts in the state. Now, there have been strides made to improve that data. And the Administrative Office of the Courts and the General Sessions Courts themselves have led that. So the situation has improved. However, there are some very large judicial districts that have not implemented a certain type of software so that they can feed their General Sessions Court data into the centralized repository at the state level. And those three are Davidson County, Shelby County, and Knox County. In the case of Knox County, it's just for their civil cases. For Shelby County, it's criminal and civil. And for Davidson, it is criminal. So the AOC is working with those judicial districts for them to implement the software so that they can upload their data. And then we would have an accurate and complete picture of the data from the General Sessions courts. And that's particularly important for the DAs and the PDs when it comes to criminal cases that are handled. Some of them are handled entirely there and some of them, begin there. So once that data is in place, then it would be time to update those weights. Remember, I said the last time they were updated was 1999. The General Assembly in 2013 appropriated $400,000 to update the weights. And at that time, the weights were updated for that weighted caseload study, box number one for the state trial court judges. They were updated at that time. There was an attempt made to update them for the DAs and PDs, but again, that data problem with the General Sessions courts prevented that from being done. So they were only updated for the trial court judges, and they were not updated for the DAs and PDs. So at this point, the bottom line is we're waiting for that data to be uploaded from those large judicial districts to the centralized repository, and then The weights themselves need to be updated because that's not been done since 1999 because of the data problems with the general sessions courts. I can talk about the trial court judges too if you'd like to. There's better news there, but I don't know if that's.
And Russell, if you could expand on what we're doing on the judicial weighted
Yes.
caseload study.
Yeah,
Just
glad
to make the circle complete.
Sure, I'll be glad to. So let me go back to that weighted caseload study, box number 1, the state trial court judges. The comptroller's office had continued to update that every year from 1999 when it started up until 2020 when COVID turned the world upside down. And there was a period of time after that where the cases fell. There was a significant drop in the number of criminal cases and the number of civil cases. There was what was referred to as COVID noise just coursing through the courts. But we have more or less come out of that. And we recognize, and I think we spoke about this at the budget hearing last year, that it was time to update the weights for the state trial court judges. Those were last done when the General Assembly appropriated that money in 2013. Those were updated, but it's recommended that those weights be updated every 5 to 7 years. And that's because things change. Society changes, population changes, increased use of technology, et cetera. So we were in a position where we were waiting for the COVID noise to move throughout the courts. We consulted with the AOC about that. And last year, we entered into a contract, the Comptroller's Office and the AOC, with a vendor to update those weights. And that work is underway right now. The AOC is really leading that along with the vendor. And so this year, they will be surveying the state trial court judges and asking them, how long do you spend on a first-degree murder case? How long do you spend on this kind of case? How long do you spend on a divorce proceeding, et cetera, et cetera? And then we will once again be able to publish the weighted caseload study for the state trial court judges. So those will be updated this year, and then we would look to publish that study either later this year or early 2026, just as soon as we have that data from the AOC.
And so just to go back and just to make sure, so let's say the data is there, the weights have been updated. How long does that process take? How long then will it take for your office to get a report out at that point? So everything is been submitted. How long does it take?
It does not take us that long to do, actually.
Okay.
We just have to ask, and actually we've set it up with the AOC. They send us the data, and then we apply the weights. We run it, we put it in a report, we explain it for you all, and we send it to you. But it is not a long process for us to do the work, but we just have to have updated weights and we have to have solid data that's accurate and complete.
All right.
And Mr. Chairman, to your point, we are sufficiently staffed to do the work.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. All right. Thank you. All right. Next member on the list is Representative Parkinson.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. A couple of questions, and I ask you this question first. What's keeping the 3 counties that are not uploading their information into the system? What's keeping them from doing that? Okay. Not yet. It's not on yet. Yeah.
Okay. Hold on one second. We'll turn it on for you. Hold on. Now you're ready. Yep.
Well, not yet. It'll light up red when it's ready.
Try the second.
Okay.
Well, I can probably answer, and because I heard what he said.
So you have to turn something on.
Okay,
But I'll. We don't really have the ability. I can speculate, but I can't really say for sure.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll get with you after the meeting for your speculation.
Yeah.
So it's not
Thank
on record.
you.
Right. And Mr. Chair, I just got a couple of follow-ups. To the comptroller, and thank you all for being here. We really appreciate this information. what alternative means are we using to contact or get information to those affected by Hurricane Helene? For those who have total property loss, mailboxes gone, this, that, and other,
Yeah.
do we have another method of contacting these individuals?
We are using every method possible. We're using the United States mail. We're using phone. We're using the media. I did a television interview about it yesterday. We're using the assessor's offices and county government functions. We're using every means possible to make sure, again, we know the universe of people who the legislation affected. And we know, just as you said, some of them not only have a house, they don't have a mailbox.
Right.
They're living somewhere else temporarily. We're using every means possible to get in touch with them, I assure you.
Right. And last question, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that. You know, having been in an unstable housing situation before, I know what it's like. You know, you miss important mail, you miss, you know, all kind of information that you need to get. And you know, we can also utilize PSAs. You know, all of our television stations and radio stations have PSAs that should be available for use for this. My last question is, what's your recommendation for us to keep the property tax solvent, or how much would the property tax relief solvent, or how much would be needed in next year's budget to keep the program solvent through 2028?
Well, thank you for the question. As I mentioned, my answer to that is, if the qualifications for the programs remain exactly as they are today, if you do not expand eligibility, based on the current trends that we're seeing, which was at least 14.5% growth in the most recent year, we would need at least $10.3 million more this time next year than we have today.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, I have no one else on the list. Oh, Representative Sparks.
Mr. Comptroller, the other night, you know, I heard the governor's talking about how to do more with less with state government. I see our county suffering, you know, with all the extreme growth that Rutherford County is facing, trying to build new high schools and just schools in general. You know, I see good things coming out of DC with the DOGE task force. I see Governor Kim Reynolds has created her own DOGE task force. Trying to do more with less. What is our state doing to do more with less when we see what's going on with these veterans, like Representative Parkinson's asking about and others? That's a big concern when we see a tidal wave that's going to hit this state. What are we doing to kind of replicate maybe what Kim Reynolds in Iowa is doing, or what the Trump administration is doing, and what the governor is asking for, which is how to do more with less? What are we doing?
Well, thank you for the question. And I can tell you that the Comptroller's Office is not new to the game when it comes to doing more with less. For years, we have been about rooting out fraud, waste, and abuse across government, whether that be state government or local government in Tennessee. Unequivocally, the most demanded service I have in my office is our investigative service, where citizens, government officials, and others report suspicion of fraud. Not just, when I say fraud, I really mean stealing money, but they also report suspicion of waste and abuse. And whether it's our investigative function or our audit function, we're working every day to make sure government works better, works efficiently, and we're not new to that game at all.
Do you have enough investigators?
I will tell you that I definitely, if you send me more investigators, we can put them to work. We have well more than 1,000 reports of fraud, waste, and abuse every year. We evaluate every allegation that comes into our office. Of those that need a direct follow-up, we follow up on them. We have probably more than 160 active cases open right now. We currently have 36 investigators working across the state. You know, we find everything from explosive bribery scandal over in East Tennessee 2 weeks ago to school support organization where somebody has decided to keep $750 of the field trip money.
Yes, sir.
Every dollar is a public dollar. Every dollar is sacred, and so we chase all that down.
Yes. With the governor's request to do more with less, how would you rate? I mean, if my constituents are watching and Representative Tim Hicks, constituents are watching, or Bob Freeman's constituents are watching, how do you rate our state with doing more with less? How great are we doing?
Well, let me say that depending on who takes the survey, when you average state and local taxes, Tennessee is consistently the lowest tax state in the nation. Tennessee is unequivocally, on a per capita basis, the lowest debt state in the nation. So you demonstrate every day and every year that you're about the best at doing more with less.
Yes, sir. If you had more investigators, you could save the state more money, right?
If we had more investigators, we could certainly root out more fraud, waste, and abuse.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Comptroller.
All right. Thank you, Chairman Crawford.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Comptroller, thank y'all for being with us today. I've got a real simple question. It just popped in my head. So I was seeing in the budget, you've got 41 full-time positions within the investigation or 41 investigators. Is every one of those positions, or do you have any more positions that you could hire more investigators?
Thank you. So, in the comptroller's office, I think we have about 617 positions office-wide. We currently have about 15 of those that are open. However, we already have offered jobs to, and not everyone, I don't think any of those are categorized as an investigator. There are probably some audit positions open. We have some job offers out to students that we're looking forward to walking across the graduation stage in May. So we're running we try to keep our positions filled. I really don't have the ability to expand my investigative operation without additional positions created. No.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I have no one else on the list. We want to thank you, Mr. Comptroller.
you.
Thank you for what you do for the state, and certainly thank you for your staff as well. All right. We will
Thank you very much.
transition now over to the Secretary of State, and I did see our secretary and his staff come in, so please go ahead and begin the transition. Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here, and you may begin when you are ready.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know where everybody went. I thought they were here for, I thought they, I don't blame them. I was kind of spellbound by the presentation as well. So I would lie to you and say I'm going to be brief. I'm probably not going to be, but I'm going to start by kicking us off saying a few words. And I really want to get really quick to what Representative Sparks said a minute ago. In our department, we've been living that up for quite some time. When I took office 2009, we had about 445 funded positions. I think now, including part-time positions, we're at 363. I think if you back out their Bureau of Ethics and Campaign Finance and Registered Election Finance, down about 353. If you take out the effect of pay raises that you and the past governor and this governor have put, I would bet you our budget's probably pretty close to what it was back in 2009. So, we've been trying to do more with less, and also trying to figure out how we take the dollars we have remaining and do the right things for Tennesseans. If you were to ask me, Representative Sparks, how we're doing as a state, I would tell you we're at a 9 point some odd. I think there's always room for improvement. Guarantee you, you could walk in our department right now and I could find something that we probably could have spent a little bit better somewhere. The key is we're always looking for that opportunity to try and figure out how we can do the most for Tennesseans, being good stewards of their taxpayer dollars as well as our time. Nobody wants to have their time wasted either. So when they show up at our customer counter, we want to make sure that we get them in and out, because nobody packs a lunch and says, Trey, I want to hang out with you all day. Just take your time. So, we're trying to figure out how we do the best we can for our fellow Tennesseans in every process and transaction. And that's how we've been trying to live for quite some time. But we're always open to improvement. People come to us all the time and have ideas about how we could do things better. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're not. But, it's always good to ask the questions. So a couple of things I'll mention. Next week, we will be starting our new Tennessee Charitable and Businesses upgrade that we have from a previous vendor. You may remember you authorized us moving to a different vendor. We saved taxpayer dollars. At the same time, we're going to be able to expand the amount of services we provide to businesses who are seeking to do business with us and be able to better do that online. And also, while we are not an organization that has many employees who work AWS, most of us are in the office 5 days a week. This will give us an opportunity, though, that whenever there's a snow day or the power is out downtown or whatever it is, our people are going to have a better opportunity to continue their regular functions by working at home. So we're excited about that. We were a little bit behind schedule, but we're very excited about getting that kicked off next week. You were great to support our Tennessee Business Against Trafficking program. We're now over 250 businesses that have and organizations that have signed up to help engage their organizations in the fight against human trafficking, the second fastest growing criminal enterprise in the state of Tennessee and across the country. So we appreciate your support in doing that. Several years ago, you gave us the opportunity to create a Safe at Home program that provides for address confidentiality for those who are victims of stalking, of domestic violence, sexual abuse. We would like to tell you there's no need for that program. Unfortunately, the need for that program has expanded. We've just in the last year, the number of people signed up in that program has increased by 50%. Part of that is outreach and creating more awareness. But, also, unfortunately, it continues to be a problem. And the coordinator of that program received a national award for her efforts. So those are a couple of ways that we're making a positive impact in the lives of our fellow Tennesseans, especially the least of these. I'd be remiss, but I'm not going to dwell on it too much because I don't want to get the big head. I got Mark Goins sitting over here to my right, my far right, probably physically and ideologically. We are number one in election integrity for 3 years in a row, and that's a large credit to Mark and the 95 county election commissions, but also really the state legislature. Both chambers have given us the opportunity to have great laws that we can go and execute. I'd be remiss, and I don't like calling names, but I guess I'm going to. Representative Crawford and his leadership and their committee, they have been fantastic to work with. And if I had, and by the way, I'm not asking for any more money. I'm not asking for more positions. But, if I had a wish, I wish the elections committee could be expanded by one and John Crawford was back on there. But I understand there's only one of John Crawford that can go around. And so I thank you for all of the work y'all have done to give us good laws to protect the integrity of Tennessee elections. But it's also not just about the integrity of Tennessee elections. We want every eligible Tennessean to participate in our elections. And, we've done a lot of things where we worked with high schools. We created an Ann Dallas Dudley Award to recognize those high schools that have registered over 85% of their eligible high school students get registered to vote. I believe we're at about 40 high schools that achieve that designation. I hear all the time about some high schools I'm out and about who tell me they've done it. They just didn't register for the program. We've got a civics essay contest that's going on that gives students from pre-K level all the way up to high school an opportunity to participate in the civics essay contest. This year's theme is about trusted sources and why those things matter and how and being a good citizen. Yesterday we had one high school that submitted, I think, 500 plus essays. We still got room for more. We award 10-star scholarships to the winners of those. In fact, I know I've been with a few of you on different occasions where your constituents have won those awards. So those are things we're trying to do to expand the footprint of building good citizens, getting more people registered to vote, and ultimately getting them to go and practice that vote. Being registered to vote without going to vote is kind of like going to a football game at Neyland Stadium, stomping, screaming, cheering. You're a spectator at that point. If you want to put the helmet and pads on in our form of government, you've actually got to go and vote. So those are just a few of the highlights of things that we have done and will continue to do. Once again, not asking for any new positions, not asking for any new dollars. The one last thing I will say is that we were very pleased to be able to take some of the money that we carried forward in our budget last year. When y'all called and y'all had something, y'all had a need that y'all wanted to fund toward the end of the year, y'all asked us for $4.5 million. And we willingly gave those dollars up, because we believe at the end of the day, people should look at state government not necessarily as a bunch of silos, but it really should be a team effort. And if there are ways that we can help you achieve the goals that you have in serving your fellow Tennesseans, we want to take those tax dollars and do the most positive things with it instead of sitting in a bank account somewhere. We're all firm believers that we ought to have a healthy rainy day fund. We ought to have healthy reserves. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that Tennessee state government works for the people and not the other way around. So with that, Chairman, I'll yield and be glad to try and answer some questions.
All right, Mr. Secretary, thank you very much. And we will begin with Deputy Speaker Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary, thank you for your presentation. It's always very concise and very informative. I don't want us to skip over the fact that you mentioned we are number one in the nation for election integrity 3 years in a row. It's very difficult to be number one, but to get there for 3 years in a row, that's a testament to your leadership to Mark Goins. Can you just speak to that briefly? What does it take to keep us there, and what efforts are we taking to ensure that we stay number one?
I've got a lot I could say. I'm going to yield to Mark and give Mark the opportunity to talk about some of the successes and maybe some things that might be coming down the pike and where other states maybe aren't doing what we're doing.
All right. Mark Goins, Coordinator of Elections. First time I've used the new system, so it's, I think I'm on. They look at the metrics of what the state is doing. We're actually starting our 4th year, but they've not announced that we will get it this year, but currently we're in the lead. But they look at the laws, photo ID is important. List maintenance is part of the factors that they look at. Absentee voting verification, that's another component. There's different categories that you're judged upon. And actually Tennessee leads substantially. There's not actually anyone that close to us yet, but I know a lot of states are the legislators in many states are doing a lot of the practices that we have. So at some point, we will have a lot of competition. But at this point, we are well out there as far as number one.
If I can, and I want to thank Leader Lamberth and the members of this body. You passed a bill during a special session that is going to make sure that driver's licenses look different for U.S. citizens versus non-U.S. citizens. I want to make sure anybody's listening to this. I know there's thousands watching right now. Someone can have a driver's license in the state of Tennessee and not be a U.S. and not be a U.S. citizen, but they are here legally, and so they can be able to get that driver's license. But with the help of your bill that you passed and now signed into law, we're going to make sure that those driver's licenses look different. So a U.S. citizen has a driver's license that looks one way, and a non-U.S. citizen has one that looks the other way. So thank you for your support in that. That's also going to be something that's helpful in the world of election integrity.
Yeah, that's an important distinction. If you were here temporary. Yeah, that's an important distinction. If you were here temporary, you had an X on your driver's license. But if you were here legally present, still not a U.S. citizen, your driver's license looked the same as anyone else. And so that's going to be something that will be beneficial going forward.
Well, guys, thank you. Thank you for your leadership. We don't take it for granted. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Freeman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going back to the award of being the most secure, who gives that award and what's it?
Yeah, that's the Heritage Foundation that we won from.
The Heritage Foundation.
That's correct.
Got it. Okay. So I ask you every year, and I'm going to do it again, so probably not a surprise. What are our goals to increase voter participation? I know that we're the most secure, but we're also almost dead last in voter participation across the state. if you don't have a goal, you don't know you're going to meet it. So what's the goal?
Yeah, I think that's an important question, and we have been studying it. I'll give you an example. I think a lot of this is motivation because we are at 64% turnout in November, and it should be higher. We had 1.8 million that didn't vote. But let me give you an example of motivation. There were 6 counties that were hit by the flood. And if you look at turnout in the state, those folks were motivated. It's amazing to me, all but one of those counties beat the state as far as average going out there and voting. And for those that were in those impacted areas, you would see why. We had the opportunity to go up there and vote. I mean, opportunity to go out there and see those 6 counties. And you could hear those folks that they didn't have much, but they had the opportunity to go out there and vote. So part of this is about motivation. Part of it's about candidates. Secretary Hargett says this, and it's true. We set the table. In other words, we have the opportunity for people to come out there and vote. We can't make them vote. And so if we don't have a voter registration issue, why did those 1.8 million go out there and vote? I don't know. But what I do know is in counties where you should have had lower turnout because they had roads washed away, losing homes, all those different things, people were motivated and they beat the trend and they voted more than folks that didn't have the inconveniences they had. So that's something we're diving more into. But I think honestly, a lot of it, and I'm not trying to just push it up, I think a lot of it's just about if you have happy voters. I truly think this, by the way. I think if you have happy voters, in many instances, they don't show up. In those 6 counties, those folks were not necessarily happy of their circumstances, and they certainly were not in good spirits. So I think that's part of it. But you're right. We need to continue to grow and figure out why those 1.8 million didn't show up. 3 million did. By the way, that was a record.
Yeah.
So we're trending in the right direction. We had record turnout, which is quite amazing because 2020, most states, that's when they had their record turnout. Now we were fairly close to 2020.
And I appreciate it. I appreciate what you do. And Secretary, I really appreciate what you do. But I mean, we've got some great candidates. We're all up here on the stage. I mean, I think we're motivating people across the state. I say that in jest, but only partially. But I guess I've asked you now, this is the 3rd year in a row. Please come up with some goals. Figure out, set a mark. Do we want to increase by 10%? Do we want to increase participation in Middle Tennessee and East Tennessee? Come up with some goals so that we have something to track towards, because this just pushing it off and saying that we don't have motivated candidates. I mean, I would wager we've got better candidates in Tennessee than our surrounding states, and they're voting at higher rates than we are. And again, to be in the bottom percent every single year in voter participation, to me, is not an acceptable reality that we just need to accept and just go, well, it's the candidate's fault or whatever. It's a motivation or they're happy. We need to have more people having their voices heard through voting. And again, I implore you, come up with some goals. Let us all as a body help you meet those goals. But us not having a goal, we can't help you. So anyway.
If I may, and I know that we could have a long conversation just on this alone and not just during the allotted time here. But you're great candidates here. You might not have great opponents. Okay. And if you're running against nobody, or you're running against someone who has they've raised $57 and didn't spend any of it, what's your motivation as a candidate to do a drive to get people out to the polls? Are you spend the same amount on mail that you would if you had a hotly contested race? Are you spend the same amount on robocalls? Are you spend the same amount on TV ads? Are you campaigning the same way? And so, I don't want to set the bar low. I don't get why somebody wouldn't go vote. I don't understand it. We're very passionate about it. There's nothing in the code that says that we should be going out trying to drive 100% voter registration, but I think it makes our society better. I genuinely believe that. That's not a Democrat statement, it's not a Republican statement. And I know you and I agree on that. But if somebody tells me they went to vote because the Secretary of State thought they did or thought they should, that's odd to me. We try to set the table. We're glad to cook the meal. We can't make people eat it. And so we want to create an environment where every every person who's eligible to vote will get registered and then hear your plea to go vote for you and go vote for you and go vote for you. And we think that makes our society better. And so I do think it matters when you have competitive races. I do think that people do go vote for and against candidates. They go vote for and against ideas. And we'll go to any part of this state and help them do voter registration drives. We train people up to help them conduct voter registration drives. And we do all kinds of advertising too, trying to get people, hey, please go vote early. Take advantage of early voting. We want people to go do that. And if there's something that we're missing and you think that there's something more we could be doing, hey, man, Representative, I have tremendous respect for you and the members of this body on both sides of the aisle. We're glad to try and do those things. But at the end of the day, people have to feel motivated and feel like their vote is going to matter. And one of the reasons we talk about how your vote matters, we got a Your Vote Matters campaign where we've worked with the Predators, we work with the Grizzlies, we work with a lot of Fortune 500 companies out there, and we work with small businesses and chambers of commerce and asking them to use their sphere of influence, because there are people who will go vote at the person in the cubicle sitting next to them saying, hey, I'm going to go vote. When are you going to go? Or if their boss at work says, hey, we want everybody to go vote. It's important we participate in our form of government. That's going to resonate more than me asking them to go and vote. So you can tell I'm very passionate about it. I want us to do better. It bothers me. It really does. I know some people out there think it doesn't bother me. It does bother me because from a young age, I couldn't wait till I turned 18 years old and got to register to vote and then be able to go vote in every election because I believe it matters. And I wish more Tennesseans understood that we're always just one election away from really getting something we might not want.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And members, I just want to bring to your attention, it is 9:58. I've got several folks on the list, and I'm not asking you not to speak. I'm just asking you to be brief and then in your answers as well.
I apologize.
Mr. Secretary. That's okay. Leader Lamberth, I think you had a follow-up.
Mr. Chairman, with that lead in, you called on me, but so some of y'all get that later. Thank you, Johnny. So I want to thank the Secretary for giving a very specific goal to the question from my friend from Davidson County, and that's for every single legal U.S. citizen to register to vote and every single person who is legal to vote to vote. So if we're looking for goals, that's the goal. And I know that to be your goal, and I thank you. And I know that you've done that both within budget and under budget every single year that you've been in office. That's why we continue to ask you to come back and be Secretary of State over and over again and continue to vote for you as a legislature to do so. So thank you for that. I did just want to say that, there are other states out there that don't do some of the stuff that we do. We have weeks of early voting. We have online registration. We have convenience voting centers in some districts that are trying that to see if that will increase the availability and ease of folks to be able to come out and vote. But at the same time, we have some of the most effective election integrity measures in the nation. And so, Mr. Chairman, you asked me to keep it short. I will say just this. This is the easiest state for a legal U.S. citizen to vote in the country, but it is the most difficult state for someone who is illegally trying to vote or is trying to, in some way illegally affect our elections. It is one of the hardest states for them to cheat at voting. And so, Mr. Secretary, thank you for your leadership in that. And I appreciate the fact that you brought a budget to us that is well within bounds, and you continue to look for ways to do that in an effective and efficient way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leader.
All right, Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Secretary Hargett and your team. Truly appreciate everything you do, and you do a lot more. Past election stuff too. So dealing with charitable organizations and everything. Also, I do have a couple of questions. One is you mentioned the driver's licenses. Have we had any documented or a lot of documented instances where undocumented individuals were attempting to register to vote or attempting to vote because they had a driver's license that looked like all of the rest of the driver's licenses?
I think if they have attempted to register to vote, they have done so because of the National Voter Registration Act, which requires if someone interfaces with a state agency that's receiving federal funds, that they be given the opportunity to register to vote when they're signing up for public benefits. And so where you have that is you have someone who shows up, they're trying to get a driver's license legally, and the Department of Safety is required to say, okay, do you want to register to vote? Even though that person has told them I'm not a U.S. citizen. That person may in error try to register to vote. We found a few of those people, but what you don't find is those people trying to go and vote.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. And thank you for that. And that, that's why I was asking, how necessary is it for us to change the driver's licenses, and basically ostracize these individuals that are contributing to our communities. My other question was, I was thinking about, the responses, in regards to, the low voter turnout. And I too, I think I might agree with you that, you can't make people, you individually can't make people go vote. But I was looking at, when that conversation came up, I started looking at, well, who are the top states that are, with the highest voter turnout? And, Iowa is one, Minnesota is another. And have we ever considered, looking at, what it is that they're doing to, for their turnout to be as high as it is versus what ours is? One of the things that they were doing is, I think they may allow, same day registration and other things that increase the ability to for voters to actually turn out. Iowa's a red state. I think Minnesota's a blue state. I think. Right. But
depends on who you ask.
Right. Depends on who. But the fact is, let's take an opportunity to look at, the practices that they are using because their numbers are incredibly high, versus what ours are doing.
Point well made. We're always open to trying to do things. You mentioned same day voter registration. This body has repeatedly taken the stance that we shouldn't have same day voter registration. I tend to agree with that. I think you need a cutoff date at which what your voter rolls are. I think it creates an opportunity for mischief whenever you allow someone to register to vote on election day. It creates an opportunity. Somebody could have registered to vote and voted in another state and then move here. That creates a needle in a haystack opportunity for us to be trying to find whether or not that person voted in two different states. So we want to eliminate that.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Chairman Hawk, you're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I think just maybe two other people in the room have run more campaigns than I have. And I can look anecdotally at the numbers going back to when I first was elected in 2002. And there has been a progressive incline. I'll even go back to 2018. I got 81% of the vote and 15,000 votes this past in a contested election. I got 82% of the vote and 24,500 votes. So that's a substantial incline, and the percentage is great. We've beat that horse enough, so I'm going to stop there. But I want to talk a little bit about poll workers. And I was in one of those affected counties, and we saw 10% increase in voter turnout. That was incredible. But I was in one of those affected counties, and the energy behind the poll workers. And I know you spoke with our administrative elections in Greene County, and anecdotally, the stories that his workers told you, they had just had their homes destroyed on September 26th and 27th and 28th. Yet the next week, they were wanting to come in and make sure they still had a place that they were on the list to come in and work those polls. Could you talk about poll workers and the need for even more poll workers, if you could, sir?
Yeah, if you go to the polling place, the average age is of a poll workers up there pretty good, and we need the next generation of poll workers to step up. But we need Democrats and Republicans. I think one of the best parts of our system is Democrats keep an eye on Republicans, Republicans keep an eye on Democrats and work in these elections. And y'all gave us the opportunity to even decrease the age at which poll workers people can come work as poll workers, and we love it when young people come in. Those high school students really breathe a lot of fresh life and enthusiasm into the polling place. But we always need more people. You've got one of the best stories, though. Had a lady whose house was destroyed, and she called into the local election office, and they just knew she was going to say, "Hey, I'm not going to be able to work. I'm going to have to, be out of state and go see loved ones." And she says, "You still got me on the calendar, don't you? I'm still on the schedule, right?" And I love telling that story, and we saw that throughout that crisis, is people stepping up and doing that.
All right, thank you, Representative Shaw.
There, thank you, sir. Thank you. Be very brief. Thank
Yes,
you,
sir.
Ms. being here, Mr. Secretary. Just briefly, because I know time is of essence now. I do appreciate the voter integrity they have in Tennessee, and but I also think that a small piece of people not voting is maybe education, and I say that from self-experience. I had a young man last election who came to me the last day of polling and thought he couldn't vote because he had a garnishment, hadn't been charged other than had it, but he thought he couldn't vote. So I think maybe just education itself could be good for a few people who think maybe because I got this or that on my record, I can't vote when maybe they can. I just want to say that briefly, but what I want to thank you for is the support that you've given our local libraries. That's been a shot in the arm for a lot of our local and especially the rural areas in Tennessee, because libraries have been a good center location for information that's needed and where people can go and draw from. And so I just want to thank you for that support.
Thank you,
so much.
Representative Shaw. Appreciate your service to our great state, by the way.
All right, thank you. Chair Lady Moody, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to our Secretary of State and Mr. Mark Goins, I want to make sure everybody knows about Honor Vote that your office offers. And that was something that I particularly focused on this past election in our county, who has a large veteran population. And if you don't know about that, you commit that you're going to go vote in honor of a veteran. And you get this beautiful pin and it gets people's attention. And it was just another way to promote. If you're not motivated enough to go, do it for a veteran. So thank you for that program, and I love participating in it.
Thank you for support of it.
Thank you, Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In your opening statements, you mentioned human trafficking, and I was sort of walking in, and you said it was probably the second most highest criminal activity.
Second fastest growing criminal enterprise in the country.
Could you talk more about that and what the Secretary of State office, how are you related with that? And
Yeah, thank you. So
from that
I know you deal with a lot of different issues, but y'all gave us the opportunity to create a program called the Tennessee Business Against Trafficking Program, which, frankly, we saw something that was happening. Iowa and Texas have both created a program. And so we modeled something after that and worked with advocates to create a program that will engage the business community and how they can train their employees to do two things: recognize the signs of human trafficking and then know what to do whenever they see that. And so we're not asking people to be law enforcement, but we are asking people to be more observant as citizens and as business owners, as employees of organizations. And the program has really built a lot of momentum over the last several months. And most recently, the Nashville Airport used our training, Bridgestone Americas. We've got some other big announcements coming up pretty soon. And the reason there's a connection for us is we've got 400,000 plus businesses that are registered in the Secretary of State's office. And this is an example. We saw a void and we thought, you know what, we could go do that. And we could step in the void to help some of our most vulnerable Tennesseans.
You recognize, go ahead.
Just to follow up on that, are you in, contact with the Department of Safety, Secretary of State? So how's this program working? Are we getting some very positive results on
Well,
this?
it's still young, and we don't know the number of tips that can be directly related to our program that are coming into the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations. Hopefully what we do, as you know, we got a long state surrounded by eight other states. There are tips that have come in to TBI from all 95 counties. And this is not a third world problem. It's not just a big city problem. And so what we've got to do is create more awareness so that the traffickers will know that Tennesseans are aware, and this is a place that you can't do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Members, I have no one else on the list. So I would like to thank the Secretary of State and his staff for being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we will transition over to the Department of Treasury. I see our treasurer sitting back there waiting patiently. So And Treasurer Lillard, you may begin whenever you're ready, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. As Chairman and members of the Finance Committee, appreciate this opportunity to appear to you before you today for the upcoming budget proposal for the Tennessee Treasury Department. I'm David Lillard, Tennessee State Treasurer, and I just want to say that I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you on this request. I do want to mention before I start that the annual Treasurer's Report was electronically sent to members last fall and is available on the Treasury's website. In fact, I'm probably going to have staff send it to each of you again because it's a good capsule summary of the department's operations and programs and has many financial facts and figures in it. This great source of information includes information on the economic impact that Treasury's Department services, retirement benefit payments, and other program payments provide to each of Tennessee's 95 counties. In regard to our 25-26 budget request, the Treasury Department's base budget for fiscal year 25-26 before cost increase request is $77.131 million. The governor's recommended budget, after including the department's cost increase request and $77.2 million in funding transferred to the Treasury Department and the Education Freedom Act legislation recently passed by the General Assembly, is $161.156 million. That's a big jump, as you may notice from what we've had in the past, but of course, the vast and significant portion of that is the funding increase that occurred as a result of the Education Freedom Act legislation. As you know, Treasury's Department's operating cost is primarily funded through fees generated from the earnings on investments managed by the department and from a component of the contributions made by the employers, participants, and agencies in the various programs administered by the department. Additionally, a total of $58.750 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds have been made available in the department's budget and continue to be applied to three major technology initiatives within the department to modernize infrastructure and operational efficiencies, including a significant program to replace the current retirement processing and administrative system that we refer to as Project ARIS. We appreciate the administration including some of those cost increases in the $6.825 million that they included in the governor's budget and 10 positions in the governor's proposed budget for the upcoming fiscal year. I just want to take a minute here today in my brief remarks to highlight a few requests that were not included in the governor's proposed budget that we believe are very important to the future of the Treasury Department and that we wish to bring to your attention and request for your consideration. One is the Electronic Monitoring Agency Assistance Program, which was a request for $2 million recurring funded by state appropriation. That continues to be an issue that we work on with Finance and Administration and others about that fund and its financial status overall because we've experienced revenue exhaustion in some of the funds and fees that are intended to support that program. Another is the Criminal Injuries Compensation Fund revenue. The department requested a base revenue funding shift in the amount of $2 million. That was a shift and not an increase as such from state dedicated revenue, i.e. fees and fines, et cetera, to general state appropriation and without an overall cost increase to the Criminal Injuries Compensation Fund due to the increasing program and administrative demands on the earmarked fines and fees funding the program. And as I said, the revenue exhaustion we've experienced in that area. This request was not funded in the recommended budget put forward by the governor. On unclaimed property, the last item I want to mention today here is we requested $350,000 recurring, i.e. to be funded from unclaimed property revenue collected under the program and not by the general fund for 3 service counselor positions to support rapidly increasing claims processing and also to support our outreach efforts to increase the number of claims that are made to the program so that we can return money to Tennesseans that belong to them. From fiscal year 2023 to fiscal year 2024, unclaimed property revenue received increased over 31%. That is reports from holders turning over money to the department. Since fiscal year 2021 has increased over 76%. This significantly increases the work required to process claims, return these properties to Tennessee citizens, and perform necessary outreach functions. This trend is consistent with other state unclaimed property programs. These additional provisions will allow the division to return more property in a timelier manner. It will also identify or assist in identifying and locating and returning property to local governments, state agencies, charities, other nonprofits, universities, and legislators' constituents. And these additional positions provide much needed resources to assist constituents in the claims process. I just want to highlight that in fiscal year 2024, the unclaimed property paid 78,305 claims, which is a huge number. And also we returned $62.6 million to citizens in this program. Fiscal year 2024, the number of claims increased 20% to over 78,000, as I indicated. So with that record number being the trend line that we're on and the previous year's record numbers before it, we could easily be paying 100,000 claims a year within the next 2 or 3 years. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my remarks, and I'll be happy to answer any questions I have here with me today to assist in that regard. To my right, Rick DeBray, Deputy Treasurer of the Department, who's a certified public accountant, and also Brian Derrick at the end here, who's Director of Accounting and a certified public accountant. Mr. Chairman, any questions?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. And I know the speaker before you mentioned the $4 million that was used last year to help balance our budget. And I do, not only do I want to thank him and his office, I also want to thank you and your staff for what you do each year to make sure with the treasurer's earnings, it also goes a long way to make sure that we balance the budget here in Tennessee. So I do want to say thank you for that hard work. All right. First speaker that we have is going to be Vice Chairman Gillespie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Treasurer. Thank you for being here. In my new role, I'm on the Pensions and Insurance Board that we'll be meeting tomorrow. And I'm really excited to learn more about that. But in the meantime, I just have one question for you. And I don't see it here. Do you know off the top of your head how much internal assets under management your department is actively making investment decisions on for the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement Program?
Well, our percentage is generally about 68% of all revenues and funds that we manage. Our personnel manage those directly in-house. There are certain areas like private equity, where we send money to general partners to be invested on our behalf, or for instance, international bonds and international stocks that it's not economical for our department to maintain a 24-hour trading operation. So it's not economical to do that. So we send it to outside advisors. But again, on any given day, Treasury has under its management or oversight about a constant balance of approximately $120 billion is what we do every day in the Treasury Department. And about 68% is what our in-house percentage is.
Thank you so much. 68%. All right. Well, thank you so much for that. And where do we rank? How does our pension program in the state of Tennessee compare to other states? Where are we? Because that's a lot of money and that's a big percentage that we're doing in-house.
Well, the pension fund is currently about $72.5 billion is the current balance of that. And we are generally acknowledged to be the third best funded pension plan in the nation.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I know all of our current and future and past employees of the state that do so much work. Really, that is a big burden, even in the private sector, knowing that their pensions are taken care of. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really just want to do a little bragging. Treasurer Lillard I met him when he was a county commissioner in Shelby County. in my earlier days when I was the chair of the Memphis and Shelby County Music Commission. And, one thing about Treasurer, he was always very deliberate. He's a very smart man, and he's one of the best that did it at the county commission. So I just want to, do a little bragging before everybody. So he's actually even though I don't think he's from Shelby, but he belongs to Shelby County. So thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next on the list is Chairman Baum.
Oh, it's on.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I was looking for the red light. Thank you, Chairman Hicks. I've got a question about TCRS as well. We received our kind of budget overview presentation yesterday from Finance and Administration. And this year, for the first time in several years, they didn't include several $100 million in contributions to TCRS to keep it funded at about 100%. I suspect that's because our investments have done really well the last year. If you go back about a year, 12 months to the beginning of the fiscal year, any of those starting points would show the markets up 25, 28, 30%. Can you tell us what percent our pension liability is funded? I mean, I would imagine with investment growth, we're at 100% or even a little higher.
Well, as you know, Chairman, our fund, the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System, is consolidated, as the name says, for administration and investment purposes. It is not consolidated for the purposes of liability. And so we have different pools of liability. For instance, one is the state and higher education program or pool. That is one plan. And then we also have the teacher plan, which is a separate pool of liability. And then we have over 500 political subdivisions and political entities that are controlled by government, like sewer districts and utility districts across the state that are in the plan as well. Each one of those is its own separate liability pool. So the figures I'm going to give you here should be looked at from that standpoint. In the state and higher education employee legacy plan, we are currently, as of June 30, 2024, under the standards applied by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, we are 94.48% funded is what our funded status is in that legacy plan. In the teacher legacy plan, the separate pool that encompasses them, they are 104.11% funded. And in the hybrid plan that we have, which of course is for new hires on or after July 1, 2014, basically, in the state plan, that again is state employees and higher education employees that are not in an alternate plan, that's 101.3% is what our funding is in that plan. And in the teacher hybrid plan, it's 104.97%. And on an aggregate basis, our political subdivisions and all other entities that are, again, individual liability pools are funded at a rate of 98.23%. So if you blend all that together, it's going to come out right at 100%.
That's good news. And I guess that explains why we're ranked number 3 in the country and why we're not making a contribution to those plans this year.
Well, and then I'd also point out the General Assembly, to commend each of you, over several years, over a 3-year period, contributed about $900 million to the legacy plan in addition. And that's a very wise thing to do because it's buying down your rate in the future. So we appreciate that.
And maybe kind of an unrelated question or on a different topic, your victims compensation fund, where you assist victims of different crimes, is one where the potential recipients don't always receive the funds because they don't know that they're available. They don't always apply for them. And your office has done a lot recently to help victims learn that they're eligible for this kind of support from the state. And so I thought I'd just ask you to give us an update on the kinds of things you've done recently to help victims, help them learn about the fund, and so that these funds get distributed to the people who really need them.
Well, on the claims side, you're right. Chairman, that there's an issue in that fund in terms of making sure that people who are victims of crime know that they have the right to seek redress and financial aid from this fund. And it's partly federally funded and partly state funded is what the sources are on that particular program. And so we recently, in the last 2 years, had authority from you to add 2 people. One is an outreach representative that works solely in Shelby County and another one in Davidson County. In that program, the 2 biggest counties in the state for criminal injuries compensation claims are Shelby and Davidson. Now, that's not to say that all of the other 93 counties don't have significant claims, and they do, but that's just where most of that is. And many times when someone has suffered the loss of a loved one or criminal injury to yourself and all the rest, filling out a lot of paperwork and trying to file a claim with our program is not something that's probably high on their list. And they need assistance to do that. They're overcome by depression, by grief. And in many cases, they've lost a loved one to murder and other terrible, heinous crimes. And so these representatives go out in those counties and help them. Of course, our staff in Nashville and our other outreach representatives for Treasury help statewide with that in all other 93 counties. And that's been a success. We've been pushing the number of claims up because, again, it's part of our goal to make sure this money serves Tennesseans as it was intended to do. On the revenue side, that plan continues to be a challenge, because it is funded primarily from fines and fees from court revenues and court cases. And we are experiencing what I referred to in my opening remarks as claims or revenue exhaustion, if you will, in that fund. Also, the accounting trail that these funds travel all the way from the court level through the clerk's offices, through the Department of Revenue and over to us and everything needs to have some more looks done at it to make sure that we are accounting for all of those revenues and making sure they're going into the right fund, et cetera, et cetera. We're engaged in that in a very meaningful way right now, and we intend to get to the very bottom of that to make sure that every dollar that needs to go in this fund actually ends up there. So those are a couple of our challenges, and we'd be happy to talk to your other members in greater detail about further items.
I just want to thank you for your efforts to get these funds distributed. Your office has done a lot of things recently to achieve that. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Treasurers. Always good to see you and commend you on the great work you do for the state of Tennessee and managing our funds and investing our funds. Every year it seems like I'm asking you this question about the earned interest. Looking in the current budget, well, actually looking at 2024, the end of 2024, I think interest may have been about $1 billion. And looking at this year, we're saying Treasurer's earnings is about almost $500 million. But in the document or recommended budget looking at 2026, we still see that 3.7. So I'm just curious why we keep going back to that number and not acknowledging the earnings that we've seen over the several years that we use it in budget development, but we don't really show it. And I'm just curious, what's the philosophy behind that?
Well, there are several things about that, Leader, and thank you for your kind remarks. I've always enjoyed working with you over the years and your members. But I would point out that even though that revenue is there now, this year, for instance, like you said, it's about $500 million. That's our estimate right now. It can go up or down depending on how the year closes out. We have had years back during the era when interest rates were extremely low. I mean, extremely low, almost down to zero, where Treasurer's earnings were $25 million on the entire balances of the state, a very small number, really. And so for one thing, we should not get in the mode, I think, of using that like it would be used as recurring revenue, because it's not a recurring source that you can count on. For instance, you can see now, of course, I monitor daily the state's cash balances in our bank account every day. And it's going down some now because we're spending down our ARPA money that the federal government gave us in advance. And we've been blessed to earn interest on the
On that.
federal government's money that they gave
Mhm.
us, which is the first time in my years in Treasury. And from my talking to the staff that's been there a long time, it's the first time in their memory that that's ever happened. So we're glad that we were blessed in that way, that we could use their money to earn interest plus our money too. So, that number can go down. For instance, right now, as of a recent date here, as of February 7, our cash position for the state, the total state pool investment fund that we invest these funds in was $36.992 million. So it's $36.992 million. The state cash in that is $29.907 million. And we have on deposit from local governments $7.085 million the billion dollars, excuse me, I'm saying $1 million, it's $1 billion that we're holding. So that's $36.992 billion, $29.907 billion for state cash, and municipal is $7.085 billion. So those numbers can and will change. As I said, that's been going down some for state cash because we've been spending the money. And let me just close by saying that, as you know, under our laws and our budget practices in Tennessee, the governor and his administration, his commissioner of F&A, put together the budget. The number you're reciting of $3.something million there to be used in the budget is what they recommend to the General Assembly. Of course, you and your colleagues are the ultimate arbiters of what goes into the final budget in conversation with the governor and his people. And so that's how that will be worked out in the end about how much will be used.
Mhm.
And lastly, I'll just note that there are multiple uses for these funds. This is a fund that the F&A people under the Commissioner of F&A traditionally use to try to close out the budget year. We sometimes have issues with state departments that might overspend their budget or might, have some need that needs to be done in terms of funding an accrual in the closing of the budget year. And so this money is used for that purpose as well. So like every other pot in the kitchen, there are a lot of uses for this particular pot of money. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. I really appreciate it, and
Okay.
appreciate working with you and on pensions, and I just enjoy, the way you're willing to share information with us about the state's money, making it easy where we can understand, plain languaging it where we can really get it, because it's a lot. And members really appreciate, how you handle things and present to us and willing to share with us and meet with us about anything dealing with the state budget. So I really appreciate you. Thank
Sure.
you.
Thank you.
Mr. Treasurer. Thank you, Mr.
All right.
Chairman.
Thank you. Chairman Williams, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Treasurer, for coming today. I did have a question about the base reductions that the F&A discussed yesterday about the OPEB savings. I think it shows $47 million in OPEB. As you mentioned earlier, this body with your leadership has invested a lot of money over the last 3 years on a one-time basis to get us in the position that we're in. Is that $47 million of savings that was that recurring dollars or was that non-recurring? Do you know?
I'd have to look back. I would assume it's recurring dollars in the sense that I'm sure they had a base budget that they put together to fund the annual contribution to OPEB, and they're reducing that now because of the earnings that have been achieved and the fund level that's been achieved in the OPEB trust fund.
Mhm.
Our OPEB trust fund is over $1 billion
Mhm.
as of June 30, 2024.
Yeah. I guess prior to the last 3 years when we've invested these one-time dollars in order to shore up that and get to 100% as Chairman Baum and you discussed earlier, to me, it just seemed, I didn't know if that concerns you at all, because prior to that, we did have this recurring amount that was going into savings. Should we look at that and preserve that in its entirety, or it looks as if maybe those monies that we had set aside on a recurring basis for the years leading up to the last three was the method by which we were going to fund OPEB? And so if we reduce those funds, does it give you concern that we don't have a steady recurring stream to OPEB, even though we're 100% funded?
Well, Chairman, you're always right, and every member would be right to be concerned anytime something that's a recurring fund balance or so is reduced. Because as we all know, one truism around here is when money frees up in the budget, it goes somewhere and it never comes back, is what happens in effect. So I think it's good to look at it, from your standpoint. I will say that I'm on the OPEB Trust Fund Board, and so is the Commissioner of F&A and other members. And I think that does not alarm me, that change. I think it's something that's a change that is the natural progression of the fact that our base fund has been growing. As I said, it's over $1 billion now. And that's, again, tribute to your leadership. Y'all were the ones who established that fund to start with. And it's grown. And, we went from a position of being pay as you go in regard to OPEB expenditures, which is about the furthest off the chart you can get, to going to kind of fully funded type situation, And so I think it's a real feather in your cap that you did that. So I just think we ought to have a further conversation as the budget winds its way through the process about that. But I'm not concerned about it as such. But I do think there needs to be more conversation so everybody understands and everybody else can get to their level of comfort about it.
Yeah, as you know, recurring revenue is really hard to find. And
it is.
And sometimes we go without it, or we forget that it's there, and the comfort of having it. So I thought it was something that, from our perspective, we as a finance team should look at.
I think you're wise to take a hard look at it, and I would want every member who's involved in that process to take a hard look, make sure you're okay with it too. Because it's a consensus sort of thing about something that's a key fund like that. Because this funds our funding of health insurance and other benefits that we promised our employees in retirement. So,
thank you. All right, thank you, Chairman Williams. Leader Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know I'm out of order, but I do want to recognize a very important constituent of mine that is here today. My baby sister, Stephanie Doris, is here. If she can stand up, y'all make her please welcome. And yes, she is pregnant with their second child. Congratulations.
Thank you and welcome to the committee. All right, next on the list is Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Comptroller, for being here. You've got a couple of programs in your department that I'm just interested in knowing how to do. And one is the Tennessee Star College Savings 529 program. I'd just like for you to kind of elaborate on how that's doing. And the other one is the Small Business and Minority Owned Assistant Program that you've got. If you could comment on both those a little bit for me. And thank you for being here.
Thank you, Representative Shaw. The 10 Stars College Savings Program is something that we like to talk about in the Treasury Department. If you don't have a 10 Stars account and you got people who in your family or among your acquaintances, et cetera, who are headed to college or headed to any post-secondary education in an institution that accepts U.S. student loan aid funds, that includes TCATs, community colleges, even cosmetology schools and things like that. In many cases, you need to be looking into a 10 Stars account because it will leverage your dollars that you put aside. And there are a lot of examples about that. One of our most pleased customers is Comptroller Mumpower. He started an account for his son, and he says he's overjoyed with the performance of his account over the years, and he's basically got everything set aside that he needs to have set aside. The plan was started with $0 back in 2012 by us, an authority given to us by y'all, and that was a good move because we started at $0. Today we have about $400 million in that plan, and we have over 20,000 funded accounts. That is 20,000 Tennessee families that are saving for some type of education. Congress amended the law a few years ago to even allow this money to be used for K through 12 private school tuition in some circumstances. So there's a lot of flexibility on it. So please, if you want any handouts, we got one-page handouts you can give out, or PDFs of that you can put on your social media pages, et cetera. We'd love to have your help with your constituents on that. We also, I'll mention right quick, we have the TIPS program, Tennesseans Investing to Prepare Scholars. If you're a middle income or low income Tennessee family, you can apply to us and get a 4-to-1 match on your contribution to that program. And we have many low income people who save, several hundred that save in this program for the same thing, for the Tennessee Stars program. So we'd love to have y'all help us promote that. On the SMOB program, that's a small minority owned business loan program. It was started back in the 90s by the General Assembly and the then treasurer with the best of intentions, I think. It was one of the programs, though, that we have had a good deal of difficulty, and my predecessors did, making it work properly, in the sense that we have had numerous write-offs in that program from loans that we have made in the past. And because of that, I came to the General Assembly several years ago and asked that program be repurposed to other purposes to a great degree. And we still have something of a balance in that. But it is a program that I think is best handled, that sort of thing, by economic and community development. And it's just really difficult to begin in an environment where you're trying to supply basic business education to people who are starting up businesses and expect that you're not going to have a really high loss rate from your loan loss reserve. So from that standpoint, it was one of several programs that I felt we needed to alter a good deal.
Just quickly, if someone applied then for that program at this point in time, what would be?
We're not making any current loans out of that program.
Okay.
In fact, we're down to, I think, 3 loans that we have that are still being serviced, and they were being serviced by outside entities, i.e. receiving the payments and keeping the books. We brought all that back in the house. Our own accountants do that now and everything. So it's in wind down mode.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you. I have no one else on the list, so Mr. Treasurer, thank you. And, got one more. Representative Love, please be brief.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and certainly, Treasurer, thank you for what you do. It is important, as we talk about retirement and pensions, to know that when persons enter to the workforce for state government jobs, they know that there is something there for them after their years of service. So I want to say thank you for that.
All right, well, I'll just say briefly along Chairman's remarks is that out of the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System in the last fiscal year, we paid $3.2 billion in benefits out of that program in 1 year. And of that number, about 2/3, a little more than 2/3, around $2.something billion of that $3.2 billion came not from employee contributions or from government contributions. It came from investment earnings that your Tennessee Treasury Department earned on the world securities markets. So if you think about it, when you get your retirement payment, over 2/3 of that, about 68% currently, it comes from investment earnings that we earned. It's free money brought into Tennessee.
Sure. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Representative Love. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
All right, thank you very much. We'll transition now over to the Department of Human Resources, and I see Commissioner Williams back there. Commissioner Williams, thank you for being here, and whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, and again, thank you for the opportunity to present Department of Human Resources fiscal year 2026 budget request. With me today, I have to my right, your left, Budget Administrator Cindy Hobbs, and on the other side, I have Deputy Commissioner General Counsel Leslie Farmer and Senior Policy Advisor Eric Mayo. So looking at our priorities, our cost increase, they focus on technology, talent management, operational and governmental efficiencies, aligning with the enterprise and DOHR strategy to enhance HR services, improve training, and optimize resources. DOHR's total budget increase that's included in the governor's fiscal year 26 budget is $264,900. Part of this is the technology piece of it. This is where we're asking for $112,100 for our Gartner HR subscription. We want to continue access to HR research, best practices, and tools necessary to provide strategic as well as technical HR guidance to state agencies. This will enhance our ability to deliver HR services in areas like succession planning, performance management, learning and development, recruiting, compensation, and more. As a result, we will have access to faster research in applying best practices in our HR strategy, also anticipating receiving positive feedback from agencies. Our second ask is for market salary survey data, and that's $14,000. Providing this internal tool to conduct ongoing salary studies in a timely manner, this will reduce the reliance on external consultants, but give us the ability to maintain market alignment salary structure more effectively and efficiently. This will result in cost savings from those reduced costs from consultants, plus improve the timeliness of our salary structure updates. From a talent management and training, we're asking for a position for instructional designer at the cost of $138,800. This role will expand accommodations for ADA needs, and in addition, it will provide customized leadership training for new supervisors. ADA compliant training ensures equal access to learning opportunities for all employees. And in addition, our supervisor readiness training will enhance our leadership capabilities, which will directly impact retention in a positive way. ADA-friendly training will benefit our employees with disabilities. And this training will better prepare, this position will better prepare our supervisors to improve their teams and reduce turnover. I also wanted to note, from a government efficiency perspective, we will be providing a $256,000 reduction in operating funds. This will be focused on non-critical expenses while maintaining essential services without disrupting our key operations. We plan to gain long-term efficiencies through strategic cost management to improve our resource allocation, and we will continue monitoring and make adjustments as needed to sustain service quality. Looking at our budget ask and our reduction, this will result in a net budget increase of $5,000 for the Department of Human Resources. $5,000, which allows for us to be operational and efficient. So again, this budget increase, we're ensure that we continue to be innovative as HR, providing support for the state, enhancing our leadership development, but more importantly, being fiscal responsible while providing our workforce strategy for Tennessee state government. So thank you for this opportunity to present our Department of Human Resources fiscal year 2026 request, and I'll open it up for any questions you may have.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Williams, for being here, you and your staff. All right. We will open it up to questions. And first on my list is Chairman Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, great to see you today. And looking back over the last few years, y'all's budget has increased as you've hired more staff and used some different consulting services. One of the ones that you're planning to use this coming year to the tune of $112,000 is for the consulting services as it would relate to recruitment. And so the question I have is, when it comes to that particular service, how do you gauge the success for recruiting when looking at that service?
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question. Good question. So as it relates to recruiting, we use Gartner subscription as a form of research. It gives providers with best practice research information to enhance our strategic recruiting. We want to be more strategic in how we recruit. We want to find sources of candidates, build relationships, ensure that while we're recruiting, those potential candidates have a really good candidate experience from the time they apply to the time that we hire. So the results of that is that we anticipate having more applicants that apply for jobs with Tennessee state government, and also enhancing the quality of applicants that we get. Thank you.
Good. All right. Thank you very much. All right. Let's move on to Leader Cochran. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner, we appreciate you being with us this morning. One quick question. There's kind of been focus on this on a federal level regarding how many federal employees are still working at home and those folk coming back into the workplace. Can you give us kind of an overview on state government employees? How many do we have working at home and what that policy looks like? How many days a week? That kind of thing.
Okay. Yes, sir. Good question. We started what we call alternative workplace solutions in over a decade ago, 2014. The intent of this was to reduce office space needs for Tennessee state government, reduce operational costs, enhance employee productivity, and provide a better work-life balance, but also improve public service delivery. Again, that began in 2014. Over time, we've received some unintentional benefits from a recruiting perspective. I would also say that during that time that we started it, when the pandemic occurred, we were well prepared to adapt to the environment. Currently, as you asked, it's probably approximately about 7% of our workforce that work from home full-time. And we have about 38% of our workforce that work a minimum of 2 days AWS, as we call it. And I use the word AWS, Alternative Workplace Solutions. That includes working from home. It also includes mobile workers. We have people that basically work out of their cars, and they're going from place to place to take care of our citizens. We have free address space, and this is where employees can come into the office, and they have availability at different offices that they can use. And we do have our condensed works schedule. So I hope that answers your question.
One quick follow-up, if that's okay. On that 7% who are at home or working at home or an alternative workspace, I think you said 7% were doing that full-time. What types of employees are those? Like, can you tell us, or I mean, is it specific agency? Is it heavier on one particular agency? Who are those employees?
Yeah, that depends on agency to agency, because we have guidelines, but the agencies determine which job classifications are eligible to work from home full-time and which can use AWS. So again, that depends on the agency. They're monitored. They have expectations from their performance management goals, and that's monitored to ensure that they're productive.
Okay. And then just one last one. So do you know the actual number that 7% represents, like how many employees that is?
It's 6.72%, which is approximately a little over 2,000 employees.
2,000. Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And one of your proposed cost increases, Commissioner, is $112,100 in recurring funding for the continued use of consulting services subscription, which offers tools for talent and performance management. How would you say overall, as far as what you're seeing, applications, resumes coming in across the state, how positioned are we for talent in our state? Or would you talk a little bit about that? Because we spend a lot of money on education. So is that translating?
Yes, Chairman. And I want to commend this committee for supporting us in the past. A couple of years ago, we invested a lot of money in compensation for employees. As a result of that work, we have seen a significant increase in applicants. I'll give you an example. I was talking to one of our agency HROs, and they said for this position they posted, they usually get about 2 or 3 applicants. Now they're getting about 200 applicants. And again, that was thanks to the opportunity to enhance our compensation. As a result, now we're really getting more quality candidates. And now we want to be more strategic and focus on those agencies with those hard to fill positions, where we can sit down with them and create a plan. And that's using these services, create a plan. You think about corrections officers, work closely with them to hire correction officers. We're partnering with them now to retain corrections officers. You think about DCS case managers. We work with them to create a plan of how can we get more DCS case managers, and it goes on and on.
All right, thank you. Members, I have no one else on the list. So Commissioner, thank you very much. Thank you for what you and your staff do each and every day.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you all.
All right, we will transition over to the Human Rights Commission. I see them in the room, so if you'll make your way forward. And Director, you may begin when you are ready. Just introduce yourself and the staff, please.
Yes, sir. Is this on? This
You
mic?
are ready.
Yes, sir. Greetings, Chair and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Human Rights Commission. My name is Muriel Nolan, and I am the Executive Director for the Commission. I am joined today to my right with Alan Staley of Finance and Administration. He is our fiscal officer. Also, General Counsel William Wade. On my left, we have our Commissioner, Mark Kelly, who is a part of the Board of Commissioners. Also have Deanna Layden, who is the Deputy Director, and Jacob Aparicio, who is our Communications Director. It has been an honor to serve as Executive Director for this commission over the past 2.5 years. Our mission of safeguarding individuals from discrimination through education and enforcement ties intrinsically to my values as a person. As a former prosecutor, the services this commission offers are invaluable to the people of Tennessee as we provide a means for justice for individuals who feel they have been wronged and have no other recourse. Our agency is a state agency who is responsible for enforcing the Tennessee Human Rights Act and the Tennessee Disability Act. The commission also monitors the state of Tennessee's compliance with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Together, these laws prohibit discrimination in employment, public accommodations, housing entities receiving federal financial assistance in Tennessee. The commission is governed by a 9-member board of commissioners serving staggered 6-year terms appointed by the governor, lieutenant governor, and the speaker of the House to represent the 3 grand divisions of the state. We currently have 33 staff members, which represents human rights representatives, attorneys, other professional and support personnel that carry out the day-to-day duties of educating the public, businesses, housing providers, and lenders about their rights and responsibilities. Staff duties include assessing complaints, providing mediation conciliation services, conducting thorough investigations of discrimination, and education and outreach. When necessary, the commission will file litigation to resolve complaints. And we have 4 offices in Nashville, Knoxville, Chattanooga, and Memphis. For fiscal year 2026, the governor has recommended a budget of $3,714,000 for the commission that is comprised of $2,744,200 in state appropriations and $969,800 in federal funding. This amount does not include a cost increase or improvement. A 1% reduction in the amount of $27,100 was taken, and that primarily will come from education and outreach. I'd like to share a couple of major successes this agency has had over the last year, and that includes the commission creating a Title VI interactive training that is available in Edison and is available to every state employee that has access to Edison, in addition to commissions and board of directors who are also have the capacity to have access to Edison. In addition, the commission has worked with customer-focused government to create a comprehensive 4-year strategic plan that will be published within the next week or two. this concludes my introduction. I also have the Commissioner Kelly, if I may, let him introduce himself to this body.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, committee members. My name is Mark Kelly, and I am the Secretary of the Board of Commissioners, and I am also the Budget and Audit Committee Chairman for the Commission. It's my honor and my pleasure to be here. This is a first for me, and to be here with the Tennessee Finance, Ways and Means Committee and Director Nolan. I was appointed to the commission by Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally in the spring of 2023. And, you know, occasionally you say yes, but you don't quite know what you're saying yes to. But it has been an incredible experience for me to serve on the commission. And I want you all to know that the Board of Commissioners are extraordinarily proud of the work that they do. And we want you all to be as well. And we hope today's presentation will give you some insight, as Director Nolan has done, into what the work is and what the and the continued work that is going to be necessary. It is and is going to be necessary. So with that, I turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for my minutes.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Let's open it up for discussion. Any questions? And we're going to go to Chairman Vaughn first.
Thank you, Director. Thank you for having all these folks here. Last night, when I was digging into and getting prepared for today's hearings, I was looking over your numbers, did a little deep dive on them. I have got some questions regarding that. I saw that between in your 23-24, you said that out of your public contacts, about 4% resulted in complaints, but apparently last year business was a little bit brisker, and 6% of those turned into complaints from the public contacts, and then you're projecting 7%, going up to 7% of that. So business is brisk. I was wondering if you could tell me what the projections are and what is the process from somebody filing an interaction or an inquiry with you and it making its way into the complaint mode.
Okay. I think I understand that question. And thank you for that question, Representative Vaughn. An individual that's located within the state can call us, file a complaint online, or walk into either one of our 4 offices. At that point, we will assess to make a determination whether or not we have jurisdiction to be able to investigate that complaint. And that means that, you know, the individual has to be located in Tennessee, is also time limited. So we review the inquiry for that information. At that point, we assign an investigator, and we don't have a way necessarily to determine how many complaints, I guess, we're going to get, whether or not we're going to have an influx or whether or not we're going to be steady. So my role the last 2 years have been to align the agency and its resources in a way that we are able to handle influx of calls and complaints. And I'll give you an example. During the pandemic, there was, I guess, new policies around the state with certain businesses about vaccines and things like that. Well, that created quite a bit of inquiries and citizens calling in our office. And so I've aligned our resources to be able to, because under statute, we have to investigate every complaint that we have jurisdiction. And so I've just tried to align resources so we are not in a situation where if we have 100 more complaints this month, we're not able to fully be efficient in those complaints. And I don't know if I've answered all of your questions, but
you certainly gave me I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
No, you're recognized.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
You gave me a better understanding of how it's processed, but what, 2 questions. I think you just answered my part of that but you do feel like you're appropriately staffed at this point to handle the influx. And then just out of wild curiosity, what's your most common complaints you got this past year?
I'll let the general counsel answer that. He works daily with our investigators.
Thank you for the question, Representative. Thank you for the question, sir.
Mr. Wade, be sure to introduce yourself if you don't care, for the record.
Yes, sir. William Wade, General Counsel with the THRC. Looking to housing, the most commonly cited protected class was disability. 39% of our cases in the last fiscal year pertain to disability. That could involve eviction, that could involve reasonable modification, such as accessible ramps or widening door spaces, things of that nature. Another commonly cited allegation is also retaliation, where someone is engaged in protected activity. Maybe they made a reasonable accommodation or a modification request, and then they were allegedly evicted because of that. So retaliation would be probably a close second. Looking at employment and public accommodation, which is the other half of our enforcement unit, I would say race, disability, and retaliation would probably be the most common.
Thank you. Thanks for that. I've seen one of your billboards on Highway 64, looking good. And just thank you for being here and thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chairman. Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I truly appreciate the work that you all do. I was thinking about, and to my colleagues that have the constituents in East Tennessee, that are still trying to recover from, the devastation of Hurricane Helene. What kind of role can you all play in, assisting those individuals that are, literally dealing with everything you can imagine, probably one of the most traumatic, events of their lifetimes? What kind of role can you all play in assisting those individuals? And that's for you, either director or general counsel also.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question. I believe in the power of partnership. It's very important with the commission's limited resources that we make sure that we are partnering with other municipalities, community groups. And to answer your question directly, we're not a beneficiary of any crisis release funds. That's not necessarily in our wheelhouse, but we have had meetings where things involving housing have come up. For instance, I recently met with the Council of Disability of Knoxville, where they were discussing some of the disaster release funds, things that citizens were going through with their housing, being displaced. And we discussed issues involving accessibility, fair housing affordability. So generally, when I go across the state to have these conversations, housing generally encompasses several different things. And we make sure that we're connected with those community groups. We make sure that we keep a reference list, because with our name, Human Rights, we get quite a bit of calls where we don't necessarily handle, but we make sure that we refer them to the other programs that the state of Tennessee may offer. And so that's our role. We want to make sure anytime you have, a disaster or something, unpredicted that happens in the state, it leaves sometimes citizens vulnerable to potential miscommunication or maybe, businesses or someone targeting those potential groups. So we stay kind of on top of what's going on in the state involving housing and employment, and collaborate with agencies and community groups across the state.
Thank you for that. I think you're being kind in here, but I will be unkind for you. When these disasters happen, the sharks come out, right? And those that want to take advantage of people who are in probably the most vulnerable situation they've been in, those you know, you guys have the ability to provide some type of buffering space between, you know, those individuals that are, you know, are most vulnerable because of natural disasters like Hurricane Helene, and those individuals that want to take advantage of those individuals that are the most vulnerable. And I think that you know, this body adds an incredible value to our state because of, number one, you have, you know, that information that you can provide to these individuals so that they can avoid those pitfalls of the people who are trying to take advantage of them. And I think that's important to point out. And so, you know, I appreciate you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the moment to ask the question.
All right. Thank you very much. Members, I have no one else on the list. Oh, Representative Sparks.
Yes. You know, no one wants to ever see discrimination, but let me ask you, does churches fall under y'all's purview? Churches?
Well, it would have to be an individual to file a complaint. We do education and outreach to church groups, community organizations.
Real quick, I mean, I had something happen. I think Dr. Love knows about this. It was a black church in my community, locked out by government for 2 years. A white church built it. It'll never make the news. They're not going to tell these stories. White church built it, Giles Creek Baptist Church. Awesome story. They were stopped from worshiping their own church for 2 years. And really just sad situation. Sadly, the church dissolved. After that, had another church, the River at Smyrna, was threatened to have their doors locked. And I was like, wow, this is America that this is happening. This is my district. I was shocked. Anyways, I don't know who looks after churches and who protects their First Amendment rights.
Well, I will let my general counsel, he probably has a quicker response for you.
Yeah.
William Wade again, Tennessee Human Rights Commission. Thank you for the question, Representative Sparks. So the Tennessee Human Rights Act is narrowly tailored. There's 4 main areas of enforcement. So that would be employment, public accommodation, and housing. So depending on the situation, it may fall under our penumbra. What I would suggest is that if anyone feels like they've been discriminated against or aggrieved, to reach out to our agency. We have very good intake teams for employment, housing, and public accommodation. Not only would they assess the complaint to see if it's jurisdictional, but they could probably also find the resources to point those individuals into the right direction.
Well, if anybody wants more information, I produced a video about it myself. The River at Smyrna, First Amendment, type it up. And I asked him, who's your lobbyist? He kind of chuckled. He says, I have no lobbyist. And thankfully, they're still operating. It's just the saddest thing. Shout out to Volunteer State Bank that worked with this church for 2 years to avoid foreclosure. But it's happened. It happened in my district. Hopefully, it doesn't happen in these other members' district. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Next person on the list is going to be Representative Chisholm.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right. So I hadn't spoke today, so I just wanted to say thank you all for your work and thank you for your presentation. That's all.
Thank you, Representative Chisholm. That's right. And one thing that I do want to mention, I know Representative Parkinson had kind of mentioned that a lot of what happens when it comes to the disaster issues and the folks that may come in, and that does fall under the Consumer Affairs under the AG's office. So I just wanted to get that on record so that you know that. All right, I have no one else on the list, and so thank you all very much. We do want to thank the Human Rights Commission for being here, and thank you very much. Members, that does complete our calendar for today. Hold on one second. Budget hearings will resume. Hold on, guys. You all will want to hear this. Budget hearings will resume Tuesday, February the 18th, 2025 at 3 p.m. And again, we will be in House Hearing Room 1. If there's no further business before the committee, without objection, we're adjourned.